Hi class, my name is Tiahna Pearson and I am here today to share with you my family story. I know that we were supposed to interview a family member, someone older, to give us our family story. But in thinking, I thought that who else better to tell my family story than me? Um, every year since 2012, I kind of rounded up all my mother's siblings and my cousins to have a Mormon family gathering. And the reason I did this was because back in January of 2012, all of a sudden, my favorite uncle, who I adored ever since, I could remember as a little girl, he tragically passed away. And when I had got that phone call to immediately rush to the hospital because it was very bad, he had an aneurysm and he wasn't going to make it. Sitting there at the hospital in the emergency room, surrounded by all my family, sparked me into trying to get all my family members together, because it seemed that my family only came together in death and something tragically happens. So we just recently had a Mormon family gathering this past August the 19th actually. And before this assignment, I knew that I wanted to share the Mormon family history. So I thought, what better time as to use my family history to start to tell you my family story. So if I tend to look off to the side, it's because I'm reading my notes. So it says, my family story, the Mormons, Tiahna's story. The Mormon family originally started in a small community in Rockingham, North Carolina, called the Little Philadelphia Community. Novella Little and Nathaniel Mormon were the parents of Lewis Mormon, my grandfather. Lily Covington and Woodrow Wall were the parents of Bernice Mormon, my grandmother. Bernice and Lewis Mormon were married, which were the parents of my mother, and they had a total of 8 children, 22 grands, 46 great-grands, and 6 great-great-grands, and 2 children whom are deceased, as well as 1 grand and 1 great-grand. Okay, so like I said, my family tradition I started back in 2012 called the Mormon Family Gathering. It is a family, let's just say, family reunion in honor of my late uncle, Arthur Mormon, whose birthday is also in August. So I thought, what better way to start a tradition in his honor in August? We've been doing this since 2012. Like I said, it's a big family gathering. We usually have it here at my home in my yard, but just recently we took it to East Rockingham Park. We had fried fish, chicken, macaroni and cheese, hot dogs, hamburgers, shrimp, you name it, we had it. And we also had a fruit table that the children really loved. So that's my family tradition that I started back in 2012. The story of my name. Well, my name is Tiahna Bernice Mormon. Back in 1980, my mother was pregnant with me and nobody knew. So this was a secret that she carried. She was 17 years old. I guess she was afraid, what were her parents think, my 17-year-old 11th, 12th grader at the time is going to have a baby. So she didn't go to the doctor. I was born when my mother was 7 months pregnant. So before then, she had went to the grocery store and she shared with me that upon checking out, the clerk had her name tag on and her name was Tiahna. So my mom liked the name, so the name stuck. So when I was born, my mom named me Tiahna. Now, Bernice is my middle name. When I went to school, I used to hate when the teacher called my entire name. To me, it was embarrassing because I was a little girl and I felt like that I had this old lady name. Well, true, I had my grandmother's name, my mother's mother. So, Bernice. So that's how I got my name, Tiahna Bernice Mormon. Life-changing experience. Well, back in 1988, 1989, I lived with my grandparents, Lily and Woodrow Wall. These were my great-grandparents because they were the parents of my mother's mother, Bernice, where I got my middle name. So back in 89, 88, 89, I was living with them. And in 89, my grandfather died. So I chose to remain to live with my grandmother because no one thought that it would be a good idea for grandma to live by herself. So she had me. I can remember coming home from school every day. I always had a hot meal. My clothes were clean. And I also remember something children can't relate to today is a clothesline. My grandmother would wash our clothes in the washing machine, and we didn't have a dryer. So one of my chores was to go out with her, hang the clothes on the line. I remember the clothespins being all stuck on my clothes, and I used to put the clothespins, on the clothes on the line. And then a couple of hours or the next day or so, we would go outside and take in the laundry. That's one thing I remember. And to me, that is kind of life-changing because now we have dryers. So I thought that was, a little life-changing. Back in 1994, I can remember it was the Saturday before Easter. My godmother had came to take me at the time and my grandmother, I was 14 years old, downtown Rockingham to find me an Easter dress. We found my dress, but unfortunately, I did not get to wear my Easter dress that Easter because during the night, my grandmother had got sick and she had to be rushed from Rockingham to Moore County where she had a brain aneurysm. I was 14 years old. So a brain aneurysm, my grandmother had beautiful long gray hair, like almost down her back, and she had to have a surgery. So they had to shave all of her hair off, and she underwent brain surgery. And I remember this like it was yesterday, and every Easter it gets kind of sentimental to me because that's when me and my grandmother left our home and we never returned. Grandma came out of the surgery with the help of God, and everyone was overjoyed and excited. But like I said, we never went back to our home, and unfortunately I had to go live with a family member who I just I didn't want to live with. So grandma came okay, and grandma joined me at this family member's home. Okay, was everything okay? No, because after surgery, grandma went back to her childlike mind. She thought that me, myself, and other family members that were around were her siblings. She thought that she was in her childhood growing up. And she called me by her sister's name, which was Leela. It kind of hurt because I lived with grandma from 89 to 94, 88, 89 to 94. And she had no idea of who I was. So I had to go along with her and, respond to the name that she called me. And sometimes I had no idea what grandma was talking about. So that was very hurtful. Growing up in a home with someone, then all of a sudden they don't know who you are. So I became an adult and I moved out on my own. I moved to Florida. Came back. Grandma was still living and some of her memory came back, but she knew my face, but still she didn't know my name. So back in 2010, I believe, my grandmother passed away. She was like in her early 90s, and if she still would have been living today, I believe she would have been 113 years old, something like that. So in 2010, grandma passed away, and I had 2 boys at the time of my own. My children were 2 and 5, 6 or something like that. And they never really got to experience the grandmother that I had got to experience growing up as a child because, after the brain aneurysm and, grandma was just not the same. So, religion. Like I said, I lived with my grandmother. And grandma was very religious. I couldn't go to school dances, no football games, any extracurricular things after school. Tiahna was in the house. So, Pentecostal to the max. We went to Sunday school, and sometimes on Sundays, every Sunday, we had 2 and 3 church services. We would get home 10, 11 o'clock in time for me to get in the bed, get a few hours of sleep, and get ready to go to school Monday morning. So my grandmother was very religious. I can remember I could not listen to R&B music. All I heard was gospel music. In fact, my uncle, who was a pastor and a preacher at the time, had gave me this boom box when I was a little girl. I remember it was silver. It played cassettes. He told me when he gave it to me, do not listen to R&B music on this radio. And I didn't because, fear of being disobedient and our family being religious, I was scared of what possibly could happen if I listened to R&B on this particular radio. It may sound silly, but if you were raised like I was raised, you would have done exactly what these adults told you to do. So what did I do for entertainment? Okay, I still do it today. Me and my grandmother and grandfather at the time when he was living, we watched the Andy Griffith Show every afternoon at 5 and 5:30. I remember because Andy came on after Oprah and before the 6 o'clock news. And still today, for my entertainment and relaxing pleasures, and just because it reminds me of my grandmother and my grandfather, I still watch the Andy Griffith Show today. Family heirlooms. My grandmother, like I said, I always had a hot meal every time I came home from school. And an heirloom that I actually will call it an heirloom is my grandmother's hot biscuit recipes. I remember being in the kitchen with her as a little girl, and she would wipe off the table and dry it off really good, and she would have a sifter and some flours, some buttermilk, and some old-fashioned butter, and she would sit there, and I can remember shifting the flour, and then she would pour the milk, and she would roll the dough and spread it, and she had a cutter and a little black tin pan, and she used to make us homemade biscuits. Now, have I tried to make homemade biscuits? Yes. Have I been successful? No, but I'm still trying, and that's why KFC and Bojangles are my best friends for biscuits. Now, the family that I created is just as important as the family that I come from. I have two boys. Their ages are 14 and 17, and I also have a husband. Me and my husband recently got married on September the 12th of 2022. No, these aren't my children's biological father, but he treats my children exactly the way I treat my children, as if they were his own. Yes, I was blessed. What I instill in my family: put God first, family second, and as long as you have God first, everything else will fall into place. So I hope you enjoyed hearing my family story as much as I'm going to enjoy hearing your family story. Thank you.